Today, we're talking about how much money do I need to make a feature film. I remember there being a little bit more in here. Fact is, it's sort of a situation of more money, more problems. I know that sounds like a little bit of a cop-out, but it really ends up being the case. Once you're in a situation where you do have money, when you do have a larger budget, people are going to expect you to pay what they deserve to be paid. You're not going to be getting the locations for free. You're not going to be able to get away with Wheels of Death pizza for lunch. People are going to have higher expectations. Once you start working with unions, you're required to divulge your budget, to let them know what you actually have in the bank. And the rates of your labor are going to be set based on what you've got, and you're required to follow those. So sort of, again, when you go up in budget, you're not suddenly replacing drones with helicopters. You're replacing Subway sandwiches with decent meals. You're increasing the basic needs of your crew. Now, obviously, if you're making a large-scale epic or a period piece, you are going to need quite a bit of money. But if you're working on something like a basic drama, a comedy, the stuff that is really the bread and butter of independent filmmaking, I think you'll find that actually your budget, what you have, isn't going to weigh in a whole lot on what you're able to do. So what I did for my first two feature films, and I found it to be very effective, is to reverse engineer my budget. Take a look at what I've got. What do I know for a fact I can get, and then allocate those funds, see where they go. It can be extremely disheartening to try and do a script breakdown, break it apart, build a budget, and look at it and say, oh no, I need $50,000 to make this movie. I need $100,000 to make this movie based off of my script. Don't build your budget based off of your script. Build your budget based off of what you know you can get. So for the sake of this video, for the sake of this hypothetical situation, let's assume that we can get our hands on $10,000. I think that is a realistic amount for just about anyone to get their hands on, whether it's through crowdfunding, outside fundraising, grants, savings, all of the above mixed into one. I think it's a good round number to kind of start with and isn't too discouraging for a lot of people. We'll go over film financing, ways of fundraising in the future, but for now, we're just going to talk about this budget and assume that you can find a way to get $10,000. So we've got the 10 grand. How do we make that work for us? How do we space that out through our production to get us from start to finish in that amount? We're going to start off with 5 rules. 5 rules to make that $10,000 work for us. Rule number 1, you're going to shoot this in 12 days or less. I know that sounds crazy when you hear about productions that go on for months. Remember, we're working on a comedy, we're working on a drama, we're working with resources that we've got. And honestly, if you're shooting this compressed in these 12 or less days, it's going to save you money, because when you're striking set, when you're having to store gear, when you're having to break off and then readjust schedules, you're going to end up losing more time, and time is money. Make this happen for you in 12 days or less. Rule number 2. You're working only with a 3 to 5 man crew. I know that again sounds crazy. We're going to make that work. I'm going to explain to you how you can make it work. Rule number 3, all your locations are going to be free. You are not going to work in a place that you're going to have to pay $1,000 for the day, $100 an hour. If it's going to cost you money, don't shoot there. Adjust your script accordingly. Find something else that's going to work. But I guarantee it, if you set your mind to it, you can get away with getting all your locations for free in this project. Rule number 4, we're working only with unknown talent. Maybe that was a no-brainer for this situation, but I think it's something to take into account. They're all going to be showing up wearing their own clothes. They're all going to be doing their own hair and makeup. Rule number 5, we're shooting only with available light. That doesn't mean necessarily natural light, but available light. For instance, if you're inside, you've got practicals. If you're outside, you're using bounces, things that you can get away with to sort of direct and steer this light. If you have to have supplemental lights, you're shooting with the bare minimum package. You're shooting with something that a local news crew might have in their possession, a fill and a couple of accent lights. Beyond that, limit all your setups to something that's existing. So now that we have our rules, now that we know what we're going to limit ourselves to make this $10,000 work, let's go through the stages of production and find out where we're going to specifically allocate the money that we've got. For our script phase, total amount spent, $0. I assume that a lot of you who are watching this are writer-directors, and you're probably going to be working off of scripts that you've already written. That's obviously the best way to go. If for some reason you are not a writer, you don't have content, you don't have something to shoot, find somebody who's got a script that would like to see it made. Now, this may mean you're going down to the local college, you're sitting in on creative writing classes, you are putting postings around bulletins around town, different Facebook groups, but I know a lot of writers who would just love to see their stuff get made. Make a deal with them, let them know that in the event that this film gets purchased, they get 10% of the purchase price. Make them a real fair deal, because the script is obviously the most important part of this film, and you don't want to take advantage of somebody, and you don't want to get a reputation for taking advantage of somebody. They're doing a big favor for you. So find a way to make this worth their while. For them, it's a big deal for a script to be produced. You can't really get representation unless you have a produced script. You can point that out to them. But make a deal and put it in writing so that you both feel safe about it, that if this film makes money, they're going to get a fair share of that. I think it's important, moving on, to talk about these same opportunities with your crew. Obviously, if nobody's getting paid, including yourself, then you need to find a way to work this out in the end if money starts to come factoring into the equation. Next step, pre-production. Total amount spent, again, $0. Do all the work yourself. No one said that this wasn't going to be a lot of work. You're going to take on a large burden here in doing your crew hires, your location scouting, your script breakdowns, your storyboarding, everything that you need to have done in preparation for this movie. You're going to have to do it yourself. And that's going to work to your benefit anyway. If you're already working with a very small crew, you need to be informed and be knowledgeable of everything that's going to come down the line, because you are going to be the one communicating it to the people that are working close to you. So right now, script, pre-production, we're $0 in the hole. Let's look at production. So since we're talking about working with a very small crew, between 3 and 5 people, let's take a look at what positions we're going to be filling on this shoot. First one should be obvious. It's going to be you, the director. Next one is going to be our cinematographer. Number 3 is going to be our sound guy. These are the 3 minimums that you're going to have to make this film obviously happen. Moving beyond that, if it's available to you, get yourself an assistant for your cameraman who is also a lighting person. Someone that can kind of fill both roles of helping your camera guy both with the camera and with whatever lighting they're going to be doing. And like I said, we're working with available lighting, but we're still going to be using things like bounces, sheets, whatever you can get your hands on, taking out light bulbs. A lot of times the cinematographer needs to have his eye on the camera, so he needs someone that he can send out there to kind of make the adjustments that he sees. So if you've got a 4th position open to you, find someone that can fill that role. If you've got a 5th position open to you, find an assistant for you, an assistant director or a co-producer, someone to kind of keep track of the time, manage locations while you're on site, run and go get lunch for the crew, someone to sort of take the burden off of the tasks, the day-to-day tasks that while you're on set. And that'll fill your 3 to 5 positions based on what's available to you. I'm assuming a lot of people watching this are already involved in filmmaking communities. They've already got people that they're partnered up with, that they're used to working with. These are obviously the people you're going to be going to first. If you don't know a cinematographer, if you don't know a sound guy, start asking around. Ask on your local film forums, go to your local news station. There's a lot of great people in news. I myself got my start working in news. That may be a great benefit for you. They may have access to cameras and sound equipment. Your local community college, also a great resource. Again, let's touch on this bad word of free and asking people to work for free. You're going to have to do a lot of really hard selling here. You're going to have to make people believe in you and trust you. And that's why it's always best to kind of try and start with these positions with people that you're comfortable working with, people that you already know, people that may be expecting you to come to them with this. Stay away from promises like, we're going to go win Sundance, we're going to sell this for $1 million and I'll be able to pay you a whole lot. Let them know up front, hey, look, there's a good chance nothing will come of this movie, but this is a great chance for us to work together, to test new things. Just try and make this as passionate of a sell as possible. And you should be this passionate about this. You'll find out in this process that no one is ever going to care more about your movie than you do. And you need to make that obvious to the people you're working with. And a lot of times when people see that passion, it's very contagious. And again, if we're keeping these shoot days down, if we're under 12 days, it's not too huge of a commitment for them. And I think that if you can sell it right, if you're passionate, if you've got a good project, they're going to be willing to work with you on this. So let's look at some of the costs that we're going to run into in production. Now, if we're getting most of our crew for free, I would anticipate spending between $300 and $500 a day on production. If you're spreading that over the If you're spreading that out over the 12 days, you're looking at about $6,000 to get you all the way through your production time. A lot of that you're going to find is going to go towards food, towards transportation, towards things like batteries. A big one is going to be hard drives. You want to have at least 3 copies of your movie. You don't want to burn yourself by having a hard drive fail on you. Have a backup and a backup of a backup, as well as your primary drive. Another cost that's going to come your way is going to be your gear, possibly. Now, possibly. A lot of times the people you're going to be hiring, your cinematographer and your sound guy, they're going to have their own equipment. If in the event your cinematographer does not have a camera, I'm going to just say this, it's almost impossible to not find a camera for free. Someone you know is going to have a camera that's going to be good enough for this film. Now, if for some reason you can't find anybody anywhere that's got a camera for you to borrow during your production, you can purchase gear for your shoot. I would actually recommend doing this over renting it at this budget range. A rental fee is going to eat a lot out of it. If you buy your gear, and especially if you buy it used, you're going to be able to resell it after your shoot. Odds are you're not going to need this again for a while, and if you buy it with the understanding, hey, this is going to be sold later, that $1,000 you're dropping on the camera isn't going to hurt quite as bad because you'll sell it and you can take that and put it into your post-production later on down the road. Now, camera and gear that you can get at this budget range, there's unbelievable cameras out there that can be had for sub $1,000. You can get a GH4, get yourself a kit lens and a good battery solution and enough memory cards. It's very easy to stay under that $1,000 for your camera package. And then, like I said, go into it knowing this camera I bought used, it's going to get me through this shoot. I'm going to sell it, and that'll be done. Another cost you're going to run into in your production is going to be your props. Now, I would try and keep this to an absolute minimum. Think about what you've got at your house, what your friends might have, things you can, again, borrow. And I'd say even right at your script phase, right when you're getting started, take a hard look at some of the things that you've written into your movie or that your writer has written into the movie and ask yourself, do I really need this? If it's too much of a cost, really consider cutting it. Again, we're making this happen for as little money as possible. And at the end of the day, if this element isn't going to break your film, consider leaving it out. Okay, we're going to have to talk for a second about insurance. Now, some of my filmmaking friends who see this may cringe when they hear me say this, but for a film at this budget level, consider going without insurance. Now, hear me out for a second. Obviously, you need to protect yourself. You need to protect this endeavor. Let everybody know safety is always going to come first. Do not do anything that's going to put your crew in jeopardy. Do not have your light guy stand on the top of a ladder holding a light out for the duration of a scene when it's very likely he could fall and hurt himself. Do not take the camera that you've borrowed and suction cup it to the hood of a car and get on the freeway. Whatever you can to mitigate and limit the risks of injury to self or property, do that. Make sure your crew has their own health insurance and that they're covered in the event of an absolute worst case scenario. When you're breaking down your script, keep in mind, is this something that's going to be too dangerous, too difficult, too risky to shoot at this budget level, knowing that you're not going to be having insurance. Your renter's insurance won't cover your gear if you're out shooting, so don't plan on that being a backup if you're suddenly planning on putting your camera out in a lake. If you're working with cars, your vehicular insurance, up it to make sure that in the event of a car accident, people in the car driving with you are covered. Make sure that your crew, again, has their own personal insurance, but again, let them know you will not be putting them in any dangerous situation. All right, post-production. What's it going to cost you? I would realistically assume that $2,000 to $3,000 is going to go into your post-production. It's going to be very difficult for you to find an editor that's going to edit your entire movie for free. That's not going to happen. What I would recommend doing is learning how to edit the basics yourself. Now, a lot of people that have gotten into filmmaking or self-taught have probably already learned editing for themselves. Plan on doing at least the first cut by yourself. A director should always be doing their own first cut anyway. Take this as far as you can by yourself. I would still recommend finding an editor to double check your work. An editor is more than just someone who assembles. They're going to find ways to make performances work better. They're going to find ways to make pacing work better. It's another set of eyes to just sort of tighten everything up. But find a way to get someone who will work with you for a lower budget, but obviously don't put the entire burden of this edit onto their shoulders. You should be able to work pretty cheaply with a colorist if you've shot this in a way that doesn't need too much intensive grading. Even if it's just someone to throw on a LUT and do a couple of basic adjustments, there's a chance your editor may be a good enough colorist to sort of get you by. I wouldn't say, worry too much about making this over stylized at this point, but you will need some basic color grading on this, and it probably will cost you a little bit. When it comes to music for your film, if you're subscribed to a stock music provider such as Epidemic Sounds or MusicBed, if you guys are watching, great sponsorship opportunity right here. But someone along those lines that you can get the music that you need for your film that'll at least carry you through for festival rights. If you end up selling the movie and you need to purchase extended rights, understand you can always take the costs, the money you've earned from the sale and reapply it, but at least get yourself rights to the festival release of this movie. If you're kind of looking for a little bit more stylized, a little bit more snappy, a little bit more unique soundtrack to your film, consider exploring your local music scene a little bit, or get on Facebook, reach out to some artists, see if people are willing to contribute to your soundtrack. A lot of people are going to be looking for that exposure. My wallet's full of exposure. But they're really going to be willing to help you out in a lot of cases. And again, if you got to cut them a deal in the end, it's worth it. For sound design, you may have some luck if you're already working with some local musicians. A lot of independent musicians are mixing their own songs anyway, and they have the equipment and they have the know-how to do sort of basic sound leveling and sound mixing. So when it comes to the end process, the sound mix on your film, consider reaching out to some of those folks as well. But again, allocate about $2,000 to $3,000 for this process. All right. We've reached the end. We're now looking at distribution, sales, film festivals. I'd say try and allocate at least $1,000 to festivals. Now, for anyone that's gone through this process, they're going to say, oh my gosh, $1,000 isn't going to get you anywhere. Do your research first. Think about what are the festivals that actually fit this film. Take some time, take several weeks. While you're waiting for your edit to be finalized, be researching your film festivals and pick out the ones that you really think, one, are worth it to get into, absolutely worth it to get into, ones that are realistic, that you really think you can get into, and ones that you'll be able to visit. Because honestly, it's not really worth submitting to a festival you can't go to, because it's not just about getting the film played, it's about being able to be there and represent yourself and the film and to kind of help build your career based off of this work that you've just done. So keep that in mind when you're looking at your festivals. Now, once you get into a big festival, say you got into Sundance, that's a perfect opportunity for you to go out and raise more money, to begin possible pre-sales on it, to find sales representation. And so if you start to get into some of these festivals and you don't think you have right away the money to go, understand that upon acceptance, there's a chance you'll be able to use that as leverage to kind of get more money needed for this part of the process. Lastly, if it's possible, I would try and save at least $1,000 as contingency. Nearly all films need reshoots. Plan on that and save a little bit of money for that point because it's going to come and you're going to need the resources to make that happen. If in the end you don't need it, put it into your film festivals, use it to throw a wrap party for everybody that worked on the film. If possible, maybe even pay people a little bit with it. But sort of that $10,000, try and make everything work for the $9,000 with the $1,000 left over as an emergency fund for yourself. So overall, I'd say that this whole method, this reverse engineering of your budget, this working very restricted, very tight, works for all forms of low budgets. I'd say sub $50,000, you can get away with this. I think once you start getting towards $150,000 budget, it's going to be a little bit trickier. Once people, like I said, know you have money, you are going to have a harder time getting these favors done. And you're sort of, I think, you need to take the responsibility to pay people what they are at least worth for their time. Even if they are willing to cut you a deal on this, make it worth them at least getting out of bed every day to come out and help you with this. Once you're getting into $500,000, you're going to start working with unions. You're going to have a lot less control over how little you spend. Costs are going to come in that you don't have control over just based on the fact that you have more money. So you know what? Being a poor artist, being in this situation can actually have a lot of advantages for you. It lets you be a little bit more free. It lets you make better decisions for yourself and for your film and kind of keep that control. Really take some time and really think, what can I get? What can I get? I guarantee you can get something, and whatever it is you get, you can make it work for you. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching. I know we covered a lot of ground. If you've got any questions about anything we've discussed, go ahead and throw a comment down below. I'll get to those as they come in. If you have any questions beyond this, things you'd like to know, things you'd like to see other videos about, go ahead and suggest those as well. I've put a few resources for you below in the description. Feel free to like the video, share, subscribe, let your friends know about it. Again, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.